Hey, homies, I wanted to stop and talk to you about what I believe is on the heart of God in this season of our building. We all know that those of you who are connected with this ministry, God is saying this is our building season. But God is just not concerned with what we're building. He's asking us, who are we building with? Who's standing near us? Who's reinforcing us? And who's silently wanting to erode what it is that you are building? Let's talk about David, anointed to be king, and the alignment that carried a crown long before it was visible on David's head. In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 through 4, the story records that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and they made a covenant. The Bible says in Proverbs 17:17, one of my favorite scriptures, that a friend loves at all times. The second part we typically don't quote. A brother is born for adversity. You can't say you're my brother, you're my sister, if you're not born for the adverse times that I find myself in. And you certainly can't say you're a friend if you can't love me at all time. If you can't love me when it's not convenient. If you only want to love me when we're in agreement. If you only love me when we're in celebration. If you only love me when we're not going through misunderstandings or in a wilderness season. You have to be able to love me through all of it. And to be born for adversity says this is covenant level relationship talk. Because some people are born, they're assigned for your adversity season. But you got to know how to spot those people and know how to differentiate those who are for you and those who are not for you. So let's enter in to the fact that David and Jonathan were covenant brothers, while David is being hunted and haunted by the king, Jonathan's father. Think about this. Jonathan's father is after David. And Jonathan and David are now in covenant with one another in the process, in the same time period. So David was anointed in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, but he did not ascend immediately. So between that anointed time and his appointed time of ascension, he was attacked, hunted, misunderstood, flat out on the run from Saul. Because the oil will attract opposition. I want you to hear that. I'm just inserting that right there. For those of us who are building, the oil on our life will attract opposition. And that's what David was encountering right there. But Jonathan, I want you to see how Jonathan handled this time period. Jonathan recognized destiny without competing with it. See, Jonathan was the king's son, which means he was the heir apparent. He was next in line to be king. But he had to recognize that David was the set man. And so it records in 1 Samuel 18, verse 3 and 4, after David and Jonathan made a covenant together, that Jonathan then took off his robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, even his sword and his bow and his belt. Now, Jonathan removed his robe, his armor, his sword, saying that I'm going to lay down my royalty to protect David's royalty, which is the ultimate in loyalty. And this is rare. This is very rare. You can't build with someone who's threatened by your future. Even if it means that they don't look as grand as you look. That was the role of Jonathan. Let's talk about the robe. His identity and his authority was in that robe, because in the ancient Eastern world, the robe represented rank, status, authority, and your legal position. Jonathan was the crown prince, and the robe signified I'm next in line. But when he placed it on David, he was saying something incredible. He was saying, you are God's choice, and God's choice is greater than my entitlement. This humility is at governmental level. And some people will only support when you know it, when they know it doesn't cost them anything. But Jonathan supported David even when it costed him his inheritance. This is the kind of person that you want walking alongside of you. The sword that he took off, that's the power and the defense in your royal position. The sword symbolized military strength, authority to defend yourself, the ability to fight. And by giving it to David, Jonathan saying, I'm not fighting you for the throne. I'm not fighting you for what should be mine. This is what God has said. So I'm willing to give you my royal fight, my what I fight with, what I defend myself with. I'm willing to lay it down, which means Jonathan's left out there. If David has his armor, then what happens to Jonathan to defend himself? But that's not important when you're a covenant brother, when you're a covenant sister. That's not important. You know that the oil is on you. I'm going to protect what God is saying. And so builders can't ascend while fighting unnecessary internal wars. Jonathan was a builder. He recognized walking alongside of David, a builder. And so whatever's going on inside of me, whatever I think my entitlement is, that's got to go. Because I recognize that this is not my time. This is yours. So Jonathan disarmed himself in the presence of destiny. The armor, his protection, armor represented covering and security. And by giving David this honor, David his armor, Jonathan was saying, I'm covering you. I'm protecting you. I'm aligning myself under God's plan. This is powerful because Saul was trying to kill David. Jonathan could have protected himself politically. He could have chosen to side with his father. This is my dad that's coming after you. I'm not getting ready to position you to be able to go after him. But instead, he chose covenant over his comfort, covenant over the relationship with his father. This was more than friendship. This was recognition. Jonathan discerned something is going on that's higher than me. David had the oil. And when you can truly recognize the oil on somebody's life, you don't compete with it. You align with it. And those who would be in your circle, those who would be assigned to walk a line with you, they won't compete with you. They'll align with you because they're mature enough to do so. Jonathan went to David in the woods, the Bible records, in 1 Samuel 23:16. And this is where I just want to really put a pin here. It says that Jonathan went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. Now, so let's go back to 1 Samuel 23. This is 15 through 18. David saw that Saul had come to seek his life. And David was in the wilderness. David is hiding. He's in the wilderness. And then Jonathan arose and went into the woods. Now, where your friends at? Where your covenants at that's going into the woods with you? Who's going into the woods? That's what I want to know. I want to look around and find, where's my posse that's going into the woods with me? And when he was in the woods, he strengthened David's hand. What's happening in the woods? David's being hunted. King Saul is actively trying to kill him. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't insecurity. Everybody knew Saul had thrown spears. Saul had sent troops. Saul declared David the enemy. David was appointed. He was anointed, but he was running for his life. He's in the wilderness of Ziph, Ziph, hiding in survival mode, under pressure. He had no palace. He had no army at this time. He had no stability. He had no clear timeline, even for the promise of when he was getting ready to be king. Imagine being told you're the king, but you're sleeping in the cave, hiding out and ducked out in the woods because you got a crazy king trying to seek your life. Man, But Jonathan risked his own position. Jonathan was the priest. Jonathan was Saul's son. Jonathan was the heir. So for him to go into the woods meant he is choosing David publicly. He is out and out defying his father. He is aligning with God's future over his own inheritance. That's covenant courage, y'all. Where are the homies that got covenant courage? And then he goes into the wood, and he didn't just go in there talking about, hey, let's talk about some strategy, let's plot and plan. He went into the woods and strengthened David's hand in God. That means he encouraged him spiritually. That means he reinforced what God is saying about David's position in his confidence, building him up in his most holy faith and confidence in the Lord, reminding him of God's promise. And then in verse 17 tells us that Jonathan said to him, do not fear, for the hand of my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel. Jonathan prophetically reaffirmed David's destiny. That's what a covenant brother, covenant sister will do. He didn't go in there and say, let's complain. Let's talk about Saul. Saul wrong. Saul bogus. He didn't do that. He went and he didn't feed into David's possible anxiety. He pointed him right back to God. That's builder level friendship, y'all. That's covenant relationship. That's the homies. And the wood mattered. Being in the woods mattered because the wood represent the isolation. It represents that season where you're hidden. It represents that wilderness part where you're just going through and you can't hardly see your way clear. You don't know. You can't protect yourself. God didn't give you clearance to kill the king. So all you can do is hide and wait for your moment. This is your process that you got to go through, knowing that you got oil on you, knowing that you're appointed to replace him. But David wasn't in, this public victory moment. David is in private survival. And that is when Jonathan showed up to strengthen his hand in God. So we got to be able to discern the Sauls who are throwing the spears at us, making us threaten, from the Jonathans who are going to come in there, protect us, warn us, cover us, strengthen our hands. Because some people are in your life just through your process. They may not even be there with you when you get to the palace. And Jonathan was like that. Jonathan died before David went to the throne. So you got to be able to discern your Sauls from your Jonathans. Because some relationships are there to preserve you, to protect you, to position you. You got to honor those relationships, but you got to be able to recognize those relationships and those that are not that. The other thing that I want to say in this builder season is that God is sending us people that will be that covenant before we get that crown. We can't stay with this, I'm getting it out the mud, I'm an island. You are not building alone. I can assure you of that. God has confirmed we are not building alone. It's not even meant to. You are not ascending unsupported. It's not happening. You will not survive without strengthening. So ask the Lord, if you don't have one, Lord, send me a Jonathan. And also make sure you're a Jonathan for somebody. So let me say this before we go. Part of what we got to do in this builder season, we got to look around and see who's in the circle. We got to audit this thing. Who is here that belongs and who is here that does not belong? Who is here that's getting ready to strengthen my hands? And who's just taking up space? Remove yourself from the Sauls and the spear throwers, because boundaries are biblical. Let me say that again. Boundaries are biblical. Pray for discernment about who is standing next to you, who you allow in your ear. Because remember Nehemiah. Remember the Sanballat and the Tobias that couldn't wait to throw accusations and say things that would tear you down instead of building you up. You have to make sure that's not in your ear.
If this stirred something in you, it's because God is still constructing. And we're not stopping here. Join Pastor Brandy and Ken Brown next week as we continue this Builder series, because alignment determines ascension. Meet us at homecc.org. We're building something that will stand.